Hi, welcome to the podcast here with me, Vivian Agestam, at Globedesk. Today we are tackling one of the biggest questions that most companies are thinking about, and that is how can we build sustainability in our business without actually slowing down? So I am joined once again by a sustainability expert to help us break this down, and we will explore why getting started isn't as overwhelming or as expensive that you might think. So if you are a founder, if you are a CTO, or just a little bit curious of sustainability, this episode is actually for you. And I would warmly welcome Judith Rupert-Szaltowski, our sustainability expert here on how companies can maximize their potential. Hi, Judith.
Hi, Vivian. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you so much for joining me on this topic. We just can't leave it alone. It's so interesting.
Too much to say.
It is. So I would love to go right ahead and talk a little bit about, the barriers of sustainability. So what do you think is the number one reason business owners hesitate to engage in sustainability?
I think from my experience, they're usually worried about the amount of time and money it takes
Hmm.
to implement sustainability. Um, Probably more about money than time. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think also mainly because they don't really know what it takes to implement sustainability.
Hmm.
So I think it's more the fear of the unknown rather than having specific numbers in
For
mind.
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I think it's a big problem when you even use the term sustainability because it's so grand. It entails so many things, right? So,
Yeah.
as a business owner, you might actually feel quite afraid even touching the word.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
And a lot of companies just think, okay, I want to be sustainable, which means I want to be green, because people tend
Hmm.
to think of just environmental sustainability. And then they immediately think of buying energy efficient equipment or putting solar panels on their roof or, I don't know,
Hmm.
changing their heating system. And that is
Hmm.
obviously associated with quite a lot of money. So I think
For
this is
sure.
then where people start to panic.
Hmm. I agree. And do you think it's fair to say that some still see it a little bit as a big company problem and something to worry about later on when your company is much larger?
If you had asked me 10 years ago, I probably would have said yes, or
Hmm.
maybe even 5 years ago. But I
Hmm.
think since sort of Greta and
Hmm.
David Attenborough and all sorts of let's say the sort of stop oil movement. Generally, I think sustainability has been um, more prominent,
Hmm.
or is sort of people start thinking about it more and more.
Hmm.
So I don't actually think it's true anymore.
Hmm.
I think we're past that point, and quite a lot of my clients are not necessarily large corporations.
Hmm.
So, from my experience, even the smaller ones are thinking about sustainability and what they can do on a smaller scale, to
Hmm.
sort of make the world a better place, which is nice to see.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is nice to see. I agree.
Yeah.
And an important one as well. So, I mean, I would love to talk a little bit about, the first steps on taking the sustainability ladder, sort of say. And obviously,
Mm,
I'm a little bit in the tech bubble, right? I work with a lot of
mm.
tech companies. I work with a lot of marketing companies in both the States and in Europe. And so, for me, for example, what is a realistic starting point for a company in that sector to be more sustainable, but specifically maybe looking into the hiring and nearshoring, so service that actually Globedesk that we provide, right?
Mm.
Um, how would that look?
Okay, so let me unpick that question because there's sort of three layers to that.
Mm,
So the general answer is for any company, is I would always start with like a status quo
mm,
assessment. Yeah, so I would sort of set up some relevant sustainability key performance indicators just to sort of feel the pulse, right? Where's that company at? So, for example, what's your annual energy consumption? How many women are there in the organization? Have you had any, let's say, data breach incidents? How many suppliers have signed your supplier code of conduct, for example? Just, get like a variety of sustainability KPIs um, that you should sort of report on initially to see where you're at. And then I would try and derive targets, quantitative targets, reduction targets, or maybe in some cases you want to increase something, yeah,
mm,
and build that into my policies. So for me, that's always the first step. And then once you have your targets and your policies, then you actually go on and implement measures to, achieve your targets that you have set
mm,
yourself. And then you measure your progress on that, and then you report it back as a KPI, and then the circle starts again.
mm,
For generally for the tech industry, we have to sort of distinguish, or when we do, EcoVadis assessments, we distinguish between service providers and sort of
mm,
manufacturers.
mm,
So in the tech industry, unless you're a manufacturer, yeah, but I'm referring more, let's say, to your company now as a service provider. Um, we're not obviously going to look at um, how to optimize your production process, right? Because
mm.
your environmental impact is, at least compared to manufacturer, probably quite small. Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
what I usually do with service providers is we look at the environmental impact more in an office-based context. Yeah. So is your office energy efficient? Are you separating your waste? And how do you actually use your service to promote sustainability?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Yeah,
And
I think that's so important as well.
this is something that is really underestimated, that sort of promotion
Mm,
of sustainable consumption or promotion of environmental services
mm,
or sustainable services. So this is like a very service provider specific aspect I would look at.
mm,
And then
mm,
obviously, we would look at the social aspects. Yeah. So for example, what are the working conditions like? Do you do anything for career advancement? Do you help your
mm,
employees to advance, to develop their professional skills? Um, Health and safety, probably not in the traditional sense in terms of like hard hat and steel cap boots, but more sort of
mm.
mental well-being at the workplace. Yeah.
For sure.
Um, or I remember in our last podcast, I think you mentioned the ergonomic chairs. Yeah. So you can, even in a sort of office-based environment, you can do a lot in terms of health and safety by providing ergonomic equipment. Yeah.
A lot. And I get
Um,
asked this question a lot with my customers because usually they automatically assume that perhaps just because we are EcoVadis certified, for example, that we implement certain sustainability policies, that we would be automatically more expensive. That it adds a significant cost, or at least a significant cost for them. And
mm,
I always say that this is not untrue. Actually, our pricing hasn't even changed the slightest related to certifying, actually. But we have obviously taken a very active choice of making sure that, at least from the socioeconomic and environmental sustainability of our employers, that that's sort of implemented.
mm.
I think this question of cost is huge. Do you think that, how can perhaps leaders build sustainability in their vendor decisions, right, without this extra cost that they're so afraid of?
Mm. I think there are a lot of things you can do that just take time rather than money,
Hmm.
but that will
Hmm.
have a huge impact on your supplier selection process. Yeah.
Hmm.
So usually where I would start is I would set up a supplier code of conduct with my clients. Yeah. So basically sort of you establish the rules of the game. Yeah. So what kind of suppliers do you want to work with? So you want to mention things like, I want to work with suppliers who, don't tolerate any child labor, or
Mm,
I want to work with suppliers who pay a fair and decent living wage to their employees. Yeah. Or maybe you
mm,
want to only work with suppliers who are ISO certified or FSC certified or have some sort
mm,
of other, certification in place.
mm,
Um, and then you get your suppliers to sign this document, which means they are obliged to stick to these rules, right?
mm.
So that is like a fairly, let's say, cost-effective way of
Yeah.
making a change. Also, you could then integrate these sort of requirements into your supplier contracts, make it a little bit
Mm,
more binding. So
mm.
it's not just some sort of piece of paper they sign, but it's actually part of the contractual requirements. So if they're in breach, you then have the opportunity to cease business with them. And another thing you could do is you could start making your own supplier questionnaires. You could sort of ask them about their sustainability efforts and start ranking them or assessing them a little bit like making your own mini EcoVadis assessment, you know,
Mm.
on a smaller scale. Um,
Yes.
yeah, these are all very sort of desktop based activities, yeah, that you can do.
And feasible, I would say, even,
Yeah,
even for the smallest company can make these sort
yeah,
of small questionnaires, for example, to see a little bit, where their, client relationship lies in sustainability, right?
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And I think if I uh, change topics a little bit, but not change it really. But I also have a lot of myths related to sustainability, and I would love to bust them out here with you. So,
Good.
yeah, like what do you think? What are the common misunderstanding about what it takes to be, sustainable?
Mm. Yeah, I think the biggest one, I sort of touched upon that a little bit earlier, is that when you say sustainability, people think environment immediately. Yeah. Um, but I think there's way more to sustainability than just environment. So there are the social aspects, working conditions, the labor rights, the human rights, anything sort of compliance related. And I think this is also relevant for you. Um, what a lot of people don't realize is that sort of information security aspects are at least part of the EcoVadis assessment. Yeah.
Mm,
So, and everything I've mentioned now is sort of within your own operations, but also what should be part of any sustainability term is sustainable procurement. Yeah.
mm,
Going beyond your own operations, looking at your supply chain, looking, in fact, ideally at your entire value chain. So, yeah, that's probably the biggest myth, to
yeah,
not only look environment, but
for sure.
also, myth number two, to also look beyond your own company doors.
Mm, for sure. And of course, another classic myth, which we already touched upon a little bit, that sustainability can be super expensive. But is it really?
It depends. I mean, I guess it's always about what's your return on investment for certain things, right? So
Mm,
yes, there are certain activities that will cost you money initially. For example, like I mentioned earlier, the good old solar panels, yeah, or
mm,
changing your entire heating system. These are obviously things that cost a lot of money. Um, but ultimately, that will also save you money in the medium term or long term, yeah, because you're saving energy cost, you're reducing your carbon emissions. Um, maybe this will lead to you not having to buy carbon credits anymore if you were legally required to offset emissions. Um, and then, there are other sustainability activities that cost time rather than money, like what I mentioned earlier,
for sure.
creating questionnaires, for example, or updating contracts, stuff like that. Yeah, there are just so many things that have a big impact without needing a lot of upfront investment, I'd say.
For sure. For sure. No, I agree completely. And then I think like my final myth that I thought a lot about is that,
Yeah.
why sustainability is, lumped into this sort of PR box, right? When it could be a real driver for real value. What do you think about that?
I think when I started thinking about sustainability, which was 2008, um,
Mm,
that's how we try to get companies to listen.
mm,
You would sort of say, hey, it's good for your reputation. Do something green, do something sustainable, and maybe consumers will buy more products, you know. So I
mm,
think it was that's sort of how we got companies to listen by making it a PR thing. However, I think now we're past that point. Obviously, there's still marketing benefits and everything, it's
mm,
undeniable. But then more regulation came in, and then sustainability sort of shifted more towards the finance department because it was a lot about collecting data, verifying data, Then in the recent years, we've seen more and more dedicated sustainability departments. And I think what I'd like to see in the future is really for sustainability to be in every department. So for it to not be a silo. Yeah, I
I
would like it
agree.
to be integrated in every single step of the business operations.
Mm, I agree. No, and I think this touches upon a little bit like my next question, choosing the right partners that you do business with a little bit, because I think this has become more and more important. And I think, a question is, for founders or CTOs, right? What should they look for, right, when they evaluate, a vendor who might have sustainability claims, right? Globedesk, for example, we are certified, so we have those sort of certifications. But how can, what should a CTO look for, right?
Mm. I think if you're completely new, if you're looking at someone's website, right,
Mm,
and you're wondering whether you should actually do business with that company, I would always look at do they have a sustainability report, for example? Yeah. Or
mm,
have they uploaded any sustainability policies? Or, like you mentioned, any certificates? Are they ISO 14001 or 45001
mm,
certified? And especially in terms of, I guess, in the tech sphere, are they ISO 27030 certified, which is the IT security one? Yeah.
mm,
Um, so, yes, any sort of third party verified data is obviously great.
mm.
Um, and if you can get a sustainability report that is third party verified, then that's even better. Yeah,
Nice. Yes. It was the most challenging aspect, I find it,
yeah,
to
because
have that.
websites alone, companies
Yeah,
can write anything.
yeah,
But if you have a stamp of approval, then
hmm,
yeah, they become more credible.
for sure. And do you think that certifications like EcoVadis make this easier, perhaps?
Definitely, because I think what EcoVadis does is they take away the pain of auditing or of
Hmm,
verifying all those claims. When you did your EcoVadis assessment, you received a scorecard and
hmm,
you receive a score for all of the four themes: environment, labor, human rights, compliance, and sustainable procurement. And then you would have seen your strengths and your improvement areas. And for me, as someone who would want to do business with you, I would then be able to, look at this scorecard and go, okay,
hmm,
Vivian is good at this, and that. And then, there's room for improvement here and there. And all of this was verified by a third party and also, and proven by Vivian uploading evidence for it.
hmm,
So that's the good thing about EcoVadis. It's evidence based. Yeah, you can't just say, oh yeah, I have a policy. You need to actually also upload the policy, and then
hmm,
EcoVadis will read the policy and rate it. Yeah.
hmm. And I
So
do
that
think
takes
it's
away.
quite,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, I think it's also very interesting with this scorecard, because it actually enabled a customer of ours to help us increase one of our, environmental policies, for example. So actually the scorecard strengthened our relationship, which I think was spectacular. That has never happened to me before. So you suddenly
That's
have
great.
like a common ground that you can, discuss and, help each other out with, and not, aside from the fact that we're, obviously doing business together. And I thought that was spectacular. I think that was a really beautiful point with that scorecard.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're hoping for.
Yeah, they made it. It's great. So, so for someone who might be listening and feels ready to take a small step today, what would you suggest for them to do first?
Yes, I mean, I would say just do the EcoVadis assessment,
Mm.
just jump in.
Jump in.
Take your pulse and try and see where you're at right now. It doesn't really matter that much initially what the score
Mm.
is. It's just
Mm.
to get a feeling for how well established your processes or your system is.
Mm. Exactly. Mm.
Yeah, that would be my
Nice.
advice.
Nice. And finally, what would be your one sentence case for why even, very fast moving startups should care about sustainability now and not, later, that we always say?
Yeah, I mean, I think apart from the sort of like moral, ethical obligations,
Mm.
um, it's always easier if when you're a startup and you're building yourself up, yeah, or you're building your company. It's always easier to then embed all these sort of management system documents straight from the beginning, rather
Mm.
than putting sustainability layers on afterwards. Yeah, I often find with when I work with big established clients, it's so hard to push some of these measures through because they say,
Mm.
but we've done it like this for 20 years. We can't change
Mm.
this now. Yeah.
Mm.
Whereas if you're a startup and you're just starting out, you might as well just start out properly. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today again, Judith. I really appreciate it. And if there is one message I would love for people to walk away with, is that sustainability doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be major or large companies that implements this. So, if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, share with it with a colleague, and leave us a review. And if you're ready to talk further about this as well, please visit us on our website with all the information in the comments section. And I hope to see you very soon again, Judith.
Same. Yeah. See you soon,
See,
Vivian.
see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.